Welcome to the Visibility for Women in Business Roundtable. I'm the MC for today, Suzanne Culberg. I will introduce all the other fabulous speakers as we go. I just want to say hello to everyone in the Zoom room. We encourage you to have your cameras on as we're recording presenter view, so you won't be on the replay. But if you're more comfortable with cameras off, you do you. And for everyone catching the replay, you may only be seeing my face, but for reference, there are a number of us gathered in the Zoom room. So when you catch a replay sometimes and you can only see the presenter, it's a bit awkward. So just letting you know, that's what we're doing. A little brief agenda. We've got 6 speakers. We're presenting for 10 minutes each, and then we'll stop the recording. And for those of you here live, we have the bonus track, if you're old enough to know what that is. Otherwise, just Q&A at the end. And a couple of warm-up questions to get us started. So if you're here live, I'd love to know in the chat box, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all, and 10 is I'd rather hide out, procrastinate branding. How much do you struggle with your visibility in business? And I'll say that again if anyone's just jumping on now. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all, it's not a problem for me, and 10 is I'd much rather hide out, procrastinate branding. How much do you struggle with visibility in your business? Oh, we've got a 1. I love it. 6, 7, 5, 7-ish. Oh, I love the ish. 10. There's going to be 1. There's always someone who says like 1,000 or something. If that's you, like, welcome, you're in the right place. 2, 4, 1, 10, 3, 9. I love this. I love it so much. Next question. What is one word that describes how you feel right now about being visible in your business? In one word, how do you feel about being visible in your business? Let us know in the chat box. Scared, meh, anxious, impossible, calm. Oh, I like that one. Excited, hesitant, slow, excited, positive, ambivalent. Oh, that's a nice word. Cautious, ready. Whatever you've got going on, you are in the right place. Let's see if we can move the needle a bit on this in our time together today. We appreciate that time is your most valued resource, and we aim to make this an action-packed event. So without further ado, let's get this party started. I'll hand it over to our first presenter, Larisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you. My name is Larisa Noonan, and I help witchy healers create spirit-guided businesses via ancestral healing, shadow work, ritual, and the guided curriculum. And before I begin, there's something I need to tell you. I'm about to hyperventilate right now. My heart is pounding. And I'd probably be almost anywhere, rather be almost anywhere than right here. But yet here I am to talk with you about being visible. So let's do this. And I'm going to start with a story that is also kind of a confession. Because there's this thing that happens to me every time there are eyes on me, like right now. I might be facilitating an online event or an in-person workshop, or I might just be the next person in line to share at something that I'm attending. This thing happens when I'm in a gathering of close friends, and all of a sudden, all attention is turned towards me and what I'm saying. What is that thing? I break out into hives, and it's happening right now. So here I am. This redness begins creeping from my chest up my neck. It's not uniform. That would be easier to hide. It's this blotchy white and red that is impossible to mistake, impossible to miss. I first realized that this was happening back in high school when I was a candidate at a basketball homecoming ceremony. I didn't know it at the time, but looking at pictures later, I saw this red and white patchiness filling my chest and neck. I found it ugly. I thought it was really odd, but then I kind of forgot about it. Years later, I began teaching on Zoom, and there it was again. This slow patchwork of color appearing on my chest and my neck. Did it happen in the years in between? I'm sure it did, but I just couldn't see it. Watching it happen, generally towards the beginning of whatever it was that I was doing, like now, I would become flooded with humiliation and shame. What was wrong with me? Why can't I handle having people look at me? Why does my body have to expose my insecurity and nervousness in this way? And most importantly, what is it going to take for me to heal enough to feel at ease being seen, to actually be okay being visible? When I would talk with others about this problem, they would tell me it wasn't a big deal, that or they would say it was endearing. Neither were helpful. For me, it was a big deal, and it was most definitely not endearing. It is a big deal. So I sought healing. For years, I worked with this pattern with much shifting internally, but not much externally. As you can see, I still break out into hives. I still feel nervous leading up to events, and I still suffer at times immense vulnerability hangovers, including migraines after I present in some way. All of this just served to further cement the belief that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, some deep-seated trauma that I had yet to unearth and to resolve. I became convinced, absolutely convinced that I was a total failure, quite possibly broken beyond repair. And for a while, I nearly even gave up on my witchy business to try to find a way to make money that did not require me to ever be visible, to ever be in front of people, ever. I held firm to this belief that once I was healed, I would feel calm and centered and would no longer experience such extreme levels of anxiety and high sensation, and that my body would not continually betray me and expose me as the fraud that I must certainly be. And I must certainly be a fraud if I am a healer and a teacher who can't stand before others without my body freaking out. And there actually might be some truth here. Breaking out into hives does point to a level of nervous system activation that is a bit beyond what my body can tolerate without needing to discharge in some way. Recently, however, I've come to a very different understanding, another possible truth, one that isn't necessarily based in trauma or a wound that needs to be healed, nor that stems from an underlying belief that there is something wrong with me that needs to be fixed or healed. It comes from this question of what if breaking out into hives is my body's very reasonable response to being in a situation that evokes higher than usual levels of sensation within me? And what if that's actually okay? And if that's true, what if instead of seeking to heal whatever lies beneath this pattern, I can simply practice leaning into the high sensations of this moment? This perspective might seem controversial, or like I'm discounting the actual experience of trauma and the profound impact that can have on one's body and life. And yet, it's not that I don't understand the impacts of trauma. Working to resolve trauma within myself and with others has been the primary focus of my life for the past 2 decades, and on multiple levels, on the personal level, the familial level, the ancestral level, and on the cultural level. What I'm coming to realize, though, is that at some point in the healing journey, there needs to be a shift from trauma that needs to be healed and which can place one in a perpetual victim loop if we're not careful, and into some version of, hey, I'm here living in a three-dimensional world that is full of sensation, and I'm here for it all. It seems to me that one of the underlying unstated goals of most healing modalities is to get us to a place where our nervous systems aren't constantly activated into some form of sympathetic response, some form of fight, flight, or freeze, and where instead we exist mostly in a parasympathetic state and can therefore respond to the world around us with limitless equanimity and grace. And if we can't do that, then we aren't healed. And I've bought into this myth. I've completely believed that I would not be healed or okay until I was no longer so easily activated into a state of high sensation. And now I'm questioning all of that. And I'm finding myself more and more willing to be here for all of it, to entertain the possibility that this may even be why I am here, why I incarnated into this physical body, to experience the full range that is possible to be experienced through being human. All the emotions, all the feelings, all the sensations. And once I shifted out of this is something that needs to be healed and into, holy fuck, being visible is a super, super high sensation thing for me, I have been able to begin to lean into and even starting to enjoy the high sensations that teaching, speaking, marketing, being visible evoke within me, even as I break into hives. Which brings me to you and to something I wish I'd been told when I first started my witchy healing business. Allowing yourself to be seen, to be visible, is an incredibly high sensation activity, especially if you, like me, tend to be like highly sensitive, empathic, introverted. And it is absolutely normal to resist or fear this intensity, to feel paralyzed, overwhelmed, and like you want to hide under a rock. And it's also normal to wonder if there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed or healed, especially if you've also bought into the belief that if you just do enough of your own healing, there will come a time when being visible is not scary and where it will not make you want to run away and hide forever. Or that there will come a time when you will actually feel calm and at ease doing things like marketing your work. But what if you never heal to the point where you feel calm and centered? And even more, what if healing isn't even the point? What if the point is to jump in and to lean into the high sensation of it all? And what if the high sensation of these moments of greater exposure, because that's what visibility is, it's greater exposure, is actually a gift, the gift of an even more highly charged current of life running through you, enlivening you, expressing through you. How might you think about how you think about yourself change if you shifted out of I need more healing and into damn, this is intense and I'm here for it. Shifting from trauma that must be healed and into appreciating the high levels of sensation that are simply part of being visible is a crucial pivot that I guide my clients into making, in right timing, of course. And from this new vantage point, it is astounding just what becomes possible. Again, my name is Larisa Noonan, and I help witchy healers lean into the high sensations of being visible. If you'd like more, I just completed a new ebook called The Witchy Healer, where I walk you through the gateways of creating a spirit-guided business. I'll pop a link to where you can register to download that in the chat, or there will be a link below this replay for those of you who are listening afterwards. Thank you all so much.
Larisa, thank you. What a beginning. I love it. Handing over to Danielle Gardner. Take us away.
Hello, everyone. You can hear me okay? I'm all unmuted. I'm seeing some familiar faces here, so hello. For those of you who've not met me before, I authored this little book. It's a tiny book called Quiet Marketing, but it actually is making quite a big deal for a lot of people in their life, and mine as well. So today, in my little part of this roundtable, the theme of my little talk is visibility versus discoverability, what the difference is and why it matters, and especially for highly sensitive people. And if you actually identify as a highly sensitive person, I'd love to see that in the chat. Just let me know. So I've got a little activity and then I've got a couple of visuals to show you. So, okay, what I'd like you to do, I want to give you a visceral experience of what discoverability feels like, right, compared to visibility in the world according to Danny. So to begin, what I'd like you to do is just notice your current sitting position, okay? Just be aware of that for a moment. And what I'd like you to do now is lean, especially if you've got a back on your chair, like just lean back, all right? And I want you to just really feel that contact with your back to that seat, all right? And like Suzanne's doing there, you can just close your eyes if you want to, take a deep breath. And just like feel sort of supported in your back there, you know, and just notice how that feels. Feels good, doesn't it? Right. So that's actually how discoverability feels. And now let's do a little contrast. Let's have a feel for what visibility often feels like or can feel like. So now I'd like you to lean forward. Right. More forward than you were before. I want you to stick your neck out and just like push forward a bit. So it's like you're energetically, you know, and notice how that feels in comparison. It's a bit strenuous, right? And so I'm sure you know which one you would prefer. So let's get a little bit more practical. And if someone could let me share my screen, that would be great, because I have a couple of little visuals to show you. And I forgot to start my timer, but I'm sure someone did. So, okay, are we ready to go? Let's try. Okay, here we go. Let me just tidy up my screen here. Okay, so this is how I compare visibility and discoverability, although I actually use the word visibility and marketing interchangeably. But in terms of this comparing the two, visibility is often that proactive approach to marketing. It requires a presence on social media. It requires you to show up and be consistent and create lots of content that disappears, actually, by the way, before too long. It, often requires like high engagement, so high energy, like having lots of energy to do things like reply to comments and direct messaging. And yeah, it's very time and energy consuming. Compared to discoverability, which is, as you felt, a more passive approach to marketing, a more laid back approach to marketing, where a social media presence is not required. You can actually achieve more with a lot less content. Like I see some of my peers and they are content making machines, and I have gone through stages where I've like, oh, I need to do more content, but I don't, because I actually am very discoverable by not much content. And you'll sort of get an idea of how these work. The other thing is that the things that I have, I consider them content assets. So they're not disappearing content. They get found time and time and time and time again, some of them after 5 years. So it's wonderful. It requires less engagement as well. So yeah, I mean, they're, if I'm lucky enough to get comments on my blog, that's great to reply to them. But, it's not like social media where, less people tend to comment on blogs. And so therefore it requires less time and energy. And if you're a highly sensitive person, then that's going to mean the world to you because you don't have that energetic capacity or consistent energy. So let's have a look at reverse engineering discoverability. So if we start over this side here, in order for it to happen, you need to have publicly available content that can be found. And typically that means content of social media, content that...
Yeah, they're going to have you working on that.
Well, yeah, it's conditioning 6 times.
Laura,
Right.
could you, Laura,
I'm
would
so
you be able to
sorry.
mute? Yeah,
I'm so
thank you.
sorry.
You're right. So you need publicly available content. So content that's not locked up inside of like lead magnets or Facebook groups or private communities, that kind of thing. But it could actually be found when people are looking for solutions that you have something to say about. But in order to have that happen, you need to have a scenario where your messaging is mapped to your intended buyer's language and the awareness that they have in that moment. Because the big error in marketing is often that we're trying to sort of give this idea that people aren't aware that they need yet, and so it doesn't work. And so in order to be able to do that mapping, it's important to be able to capture the words and language that your ideal buyer uses. And so that's all about market research or audience research. And in my business, I have an ongoing practice. So I always have this fresh information. What discoverability leads to, well, in my case at least, is it leads to book sales, which tends to lead to courses and then program enrollments. And once they enter, the purchases tend to just happen on their own without any prompting from me, which is really nice. And so I've noticed a big difference when someone comes in through like a non-discoverability way, like maybe through social media or something. there's a lot more effort required to actually for them, and it's a longer period before they actually purchase. And just thought I'd share as well that I've actually defined that there's 3 different types of discoverability. There is referability, which is, that's when like people in your network, they go, oh, you know what? You know who you need to speak to? Danielle Gardner, because blah, 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 blah. Because they know a bit about your message, your approach. Like they know, they've seen you say stuff and they're like, oh, I know the exact person. And again, that comes back to messaging. Suggestibility is another one, and this, I love this. So my book is being I'm being found quite well now on Kindle, because Kindle is suggesting my book. People aren't going looking for it, but because of their other interests and whatnot, they're doing that. So there's various platforms do that. YouTube is certainly it goes into the category here of searchability, but also suggestibility. And if you go to YouTube like I do, like probably at least once a day, you get caught up watching stuff that you're not there for, because they're showing you stuff that, you know, they know that you're going to be interested in. And then of course, searchability is the various search engines like Google, like all of those things, but also things like Pinterest and YouTube and stuff like that. So there are various avenues for discoverability. Some are a lot faster than others. Pinterest, for example, it ain't fast. It can take like a year. I had someone working on my account for a year and not a lot happened until after 12 months. So I focus on some other areas that are a lot quicker, like basically search engines and having content on YouTube. So just wanted to touch on this idea in case anyone here, you're thinking, oh, but like I have loads of content, I have blogs, I have whatever, and nobody finds it. And just having content out there doesn't mean you're going to be discovered. And that's because discoverability is fueled by this equation that I just made up, really, that I am calling the messaging equation. So it's like E plus N plus P equals M. So the expertise is like your skills, your things like that, a need in the marketplace, your perspective, and that comes together to form a messaging foundation. And I do see my time's run out, ladies. So I think actually this is the last little thing I've got to share. So the way to sort of work this forward, because we kind of worked it back, is it needs to start with capturing the words and language of your ideal buyer before at the beginning of the journey. A lot of people reach for testimonials, but the language there is from after the journey. So you're getting them at a different consciousness, you know. Then that needs to be mapped to your messaging, and their needs need to be mapped into something that makes sense in terms of the messaging. And then that puts you in a position to actually be able to create content that can be found when people are looking for things. No, this is the last slide. This is definitely the last slide. This is the closing note. How you name content pieces matters a lot. And this is why people can have loads of content and it won't get found, because they don't name it in a way that has any resemblance of what anyone might type into a search engine. And also have the benefit of reading or watching the thing in the title. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. That was fabulous. And Danny's info will be in the replay. So, and if you've got anything you want to drop in the chat for how people can find you, Danny, please do. Alrighty. So now, introducing myself. My name's Suzanne Culberg. I am the Nope coach. I help women set boundaries and say no without feeling like a bitch. And if you hadn't guessed already, I'm a bit of a sweary fairy, so prepare your ears accordingly, especially if you have young people in your vicinity. I talk fast. I'm the mum of 2 who may or may not turn up. We will see. And I'm from Sydney, Australia. So it's already tomorrow. Future's looking good, people. In terms of being unapologetically you, there are an endless number of ways to be visible in your business. And a caveat before we dive in. The point of this presentation is not to put down, poo-poo, drudge up any particular visibility strategy. It's instead about finding your visibility strategy that works and feels good for you. Because trying on another person's visibility strategy can be like trying on their underwear. Although you could do it, chances are it'd be gross. So being unapologetically you is about finding your way in business and in life. And back to the underwear example. We all know there are countless types of underwear. There are different colors, styles, shapes, sizes, materials, and what's comfortable for one person may feel hideous to somebody else. We all have our personal preferences. So we don't champion for only one type of underwear in the world. We try out the different types, we find what works for us, and we tend to stick with that. And then sometimes as our size or shape or preference change, we change the type of underwear that we wear. I know certainly post-mum bod has very different preferences than before I had children. And if my late mother was listening to this, she would tell me I was being uncouth for speaking about underwear in public. But what is uncouth for my mother is totally acceptable for me, because part of being unapologetically me is being a little irreverent and mischievous. So let me hand this over to you. What is something that you were told you had to do in business that just didn't feel right to you? So pop it in the chat box. What's something that you had to do? Or said in another way, what trend have you tried on that just wasn't you? And as you're doing this, please mind that as you read the chat box, someone might say something that's totally your jam. And please don't get defensive or think that they're knocking your strategy. They just have a different preference to you, like they probably wear different underwear to you. And we just don't see that. Well, hopefully, please, nobody strip off. What do we got here? Let's see. Have a website, create a funnel, 4 Facebook Lives a day, write every day, live videos, constantly make videos, sell every Friday. Oh, one of mine I forgot all about was Follow Up Friday. I was in this group that had Follow Up Friday, and every Friday I used to dread it because I was like, oh, here comes the barrage of emails. Niching the fuck down. Oh, love it. Upsells and bonuses. Oh, yeah. Upsells. Like if you buy this, then you can have some steak knives. Cold calls. Oh, yeah, they make me want to die inside. Multiple social media platforms. I'm here for it. LinkedIn, like I'm sure some of you love it and you talk about it. I tried it for a small period of time. The more social media platforms I had, the more places I had to avoid spam. Like I didn't get, it's like, let's go and check all these places to see how many spam messages I can get. Post daily, create ton of content, hustle, social post every day, create email campaigns, post several times a week, collabs, IG lives. Oh my God, you guys are totally going. Attend endless league groups and market my coaching practice. Oh yeah, isn't that skeezy? Let's go into other groups and give value in hopes that people will buy shit from me. Marketing channels, Instagram, put my prices in posts. See, that's one, that's very controversial because some people, and one of my visibility strategies is price transparency, but I totally honor that to other people, they don't have price. Reach out to 10 to 15 people a day. That makes me want to die inside. But some people love it. Create funnels. Yeah, like, I don't know about you, but the whole idea of being in someone's funnel just feels totally skeezy to me. But anyway, each to their own. High ticket. Yes. And what even is high ticket? I know I'm going to run out of time reading all these, but thank you. You guys get it. You get it. And now, I don't even need to give my examples. You've given enough. Next question. How does it feel doing these things that just aren't you? Like, I'm sure, think of the times that you've tried doing this. How did it feel? Hard. Yeah. Unseen. Ugh. Frustrating, misaligned, yucky, stressful, tiring, inauthentic. Faking it. Nervous system on the fritz. Oh, yeah. Forced, confused, overwhelming, unauthentic. Like you're a child in a CEO's job. Hats off to that comment. Exhausting. Oh, the vomit emoji. Overstimulated. Oh, my goodness. Body says no. Fraudster, inauthentic, FOMO. Yes, yes, yes. I had all these things typed out. I was like, what if nobody answers my question? I was like, I didn't need to bother. You guys are on fire. For me, like I wasn't doing it right because I just didn't get the results that other people seem to be getting. Like all these perfect promised promos. If you do this, this will happen. And it's like, what's fundamentally wrong with me? Because I did that and I didn't get shit. So yes. Alrighty. Now let's flip the switch and it'll be interesting to see if you're as forthcoming with this, but we'll see. What is something that you do, and this can be personally, it doesn't need to be in business. What's something that you do in life that is 100% unapologetically you? And you might only do this thing currently among friends and family where you feel safe. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if you can't think of something right off right now, but just let this sit with you. So for me, if I know it's your birthday, I will sing you the happy birthday song. And growing up, I was told that I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. And what comes out of my mouth is like a personal attack on people's eardrums. But despite all that, it never stops me from belting out the tune. So if it's somebody's birthday here, let me know. I'll take it away. But that's something that I do that's unapologetically me. So what have we got here? Repeat the question, please. What's something you do that's 100% unapologetically you? Eat soup out of the saucepan. Oh my goodness, I love that. I used to drink milk out of the carton. My mum like literally belted that out of me when I was a child, story for another day. But if it's left to my own devices, yeah, I drink milk straight from the carton. I'm that person. Not when other people are coming over, but you know, write and draw cartoons, talk about Jesus, sing, especially when by myself, chase puppy joyously when she steals my shoes, talking to people one-to-one in person, walking around naked, yes, in my own home, make up really silly dance moves in my kitchen, read a novel first thing in the morning, don't pick a side, eat pizza crust first and toppings last. I am with you. That's such a good thing. Dance in the kitchen, spontaneously break out into song. As you're thinking about these things, how does it feel to do these things that are unapologetically you? Whether you've shared what your thing was or not, don't feel pressured to. Free, calm, relieving, great, easy. Love the happy birthday song. Sing to people. Fun, joyful. Yes, yes, keep them coming. So my invitation for you today is how can you bring more of your unapologetic self? So you're bringing this freedom, joyful, exhale, light. I'm not saying, I don't suggest walking around naked. Like, you know, that, I think unless you want to go on OnlyFans, I don't know, you know what I mean? But, you know, the energy of being unapologetically you, how can you bring that to your business? And what is something that you could do that may seem a little outrageous to others, but feels unapologetically you? You're not doing it because you're told you need a funnel or a niche or to turn up 3 times a day or whatever. So for me personally, I challenged myself to a year of daily podcasts, and I smiled when Danny said content creating machine. I'm like, I am one of those. I create for free. I curate when you have to pay me. So if someone's like, can you tell me which episode? I'm like, no, you can Google that shit. You know, I create daily, but when we interact and you want to start like, you know, engaging on a deeper level, that's when you pay me. That's one of my boundaries. But I challenged myself to 1 year of daily podcasts. I'm currently on day 361. Baby, I'm bringing it home strong. To other people, that seems weird or wacky or unnatural. But to me, it's fun. I don't do show notes because I don't think people read them anyway. I don't have a jingle because once I've listened to a podcast once, I hit that plus 15 seconds button. I know for the shows I listen to how many times to skip past it, so I don't even bother. Like I do my show completely unapologetically me, and I absolutely love it. And according to whatever it's called, Listen Notes, which apparently is a reputable source, but I don't know, I'm in the top 3% of global podcasts. So I have a lot of downloads. I'm trying to build my YouTube. So my goal for this year is to build YouTube. But that's something that I do. And then as it finishes, people are like, what are you going to do now as you're approaching 365? I'm like, I'm going to an intuitive release schedule, which means I'm going to drop an episode whenever the fuck I feel like it. So I've gone from every single day to when I can be asked. And, you know, I just want to invite you to think something that you want to do that you can dabble in and see how it feels for you and not get caught up on what you're told that you should do. So I've got 15 seconds. I have a gift. Part of being unapologetically you is having solid boundaries. So my gift for you today is my Building Boundaries bundle. It's normally $50 Australian, but if you use the coupon code Sistermind, you can grab that for free. I'll pop the details in the chat box. Thank you for attending today. Boom. Oh, now I've got to put my presenter hat back on. Hang on, who's next? Just a minute. I've got to look at my little list. Introducing Laura.
I'm next. Hello, everyone. I am Laura Gates-Lupton, and I am co-host of the Woman Uncaged podcast, which I co-host with Linda Katz, who will be speaking to you next. I'm a life and money coach and a former psychotherapist, and I primarily work with women at midlife who want to become earners. And here's a fun fact about me that I don't share very often, but I frequently wake up in the morning with a song in my head. And sometimes it's related to something I've heard recently, but more often it's like an oracle of sorts. And it takes me a while to figure out what it actually means. A couple of weeks ago, I woke up with this line in my head. The most important person in the whole wide world is you, and you hardly even know you. And I thought, oh, that seems familiar. But I wasn't sure where it came from. It seemed really familiar, but I was like, where, right? I couldn't place it. Is anybody else here? Did anyone else grow up in the States in the 70s and watch Saturday morning cartoons? Okay. Anybody recognize the tune? All right. So for those who don't know, who didn't recognize it, it was part of like a public service commercial that aired on Saturday mornings in the 70s between cartoons. And it was a message for kids about how important they are. And we can debate whether that's a great message for kids. You're the most important person in the whole wide world. But for whatever reason, I woke up with that song in my head and I thought, why? And then I realized it's related directly to this roundtable today. And I'll tell you how in a few minutes. To my way of thinking, our discomfort with visibility is inextricably linked to our discomfort with our power and our fear of success. Many of my clients over the years have been writers, and many have been psychotherapists. And one thing I've noted over the years is that most writers have a huge fear of success, and it holds them back. I've not seen this with therapists. Well, why is that? I think it's because for a writer to become successful, it requires some degree of visibility. A therapist's success occurs very quietly in her office, and it isn't public at all, unless she chooses to make it so. Conversely, you can't have a bestseller without people knowing about it. And even if you use a pen name, the people around you are likely to know. Many writers have told me that their biggest fear is that they will be successful and then suddenly a lot more will be expected of them. This is where the song comes in. The most important person in the whole wide world is you, and you hardly even know you. It's my belief that we can't have authentic power if we're not willing to be visible to ourselves first and foremost. If you don't know who you are and what you're capable of, it's hard to bet on yourself and to take the kind of risks that come along with visibility, including rising to the occasion and to others' expectations, if we so choose. Many of us fear that if we stand strong in our power, at some point, someone's going to call us a bitch, right? Yeah, Suzanne. Well, I like turning bitch into an acronym, take some of the sting out of it. So for me, bitch stands for being in control of herself. And when someone calls me a bitch, I think, well, yeah, I am in total control of myself. Thank you very much. All right, so let's make a list in the chat. I'm sure I'm not the only one that fears being called some names. What words do you fear? Like, greedy, bitch, selfish, pushy. Let's make a list. I want to see what things you've got percolating that you're afraid of. Loser. Yeah, that's condescending. Rich bitch. Selfish, entitled, intense, annoying, traitor to my industry. Ooh, pushy. Tall poppy. Oh, that's interesting. Opinionated, too much, know-it-all. Who does she think she is? That's a big one for me too. Know-it-all, not likable. Boaster, braggy, too sensitive. Yeah, I've been called too sensitive my whole life. Full of herself. Yeah, these are all great. So y'all know what I'm talking about. These are the things that try to keep us small, right? So let me share a few things that can help you stay centered in your power when it comes to being visible and when it comes to facing the fear of being called any one of those names. So the first one I want to share, I have to ask you a question for, and you don't have to answer this in the chat, but just answer for yourself. Which word that we just shared or which phrase hit you the hardest? Which one made you think, ouch, like, yeah, that's the one I'm scared of? Whichever one it was, I'm going to encourage you to try to embrace that word or that phrase. Maybe turn it into an acronym like bitch, figuring out what you want each letter to stand for, or spend some time asking yourself some questions about it. So I have a client who was worried that people would think she was a greedy bitch. And I gave her the assignment to, well, who is the greedy bitch? What does she do? Like, what's she like? And so she spent a week walking around like saying, like, how does the greedy bitch think? What does she care about? What does she not care about? How does she behave? And her husband was like, I kind of like this greedy bitch. She had a lot of fun, but that can take some of the power out of it if you're willing to play with it. The second piece I have for you is to consider how you're being visible to yourself and how are you being on your own side? You know, like I think when Larisa was talking earlier, what she was describing was really being on her own side, was coming to terms with this situation, like, and being on her own side about it, not beating herself up about it anymore. Like, where can you do that in your life? Like, where can you honor your needs and desires? Where can you support yourself as you're trying to show up in a way that feels uncomfortable? You know, how can you watch yourself talk around that? How can you feed yourself kind thoughts? The third thing I have to share is understanding what power really is. Because I think as women, we get tripped up a lot because we think of power as coercive, manipulative, and forceful. We think of it as power over. But the kind of power I'm talking about, the kind of power that's linked to visibility, is power too. It's the power. Power is the ability to make something happen. Sorry, I just had to let somebody in and I got confused for a second. It's making a difference and expanding our own capabilities. Power is having independence and impact. It's having the ability to choose how we live. Power is an internal sense of knowing who you are and choosing to express that. You're the most important person in the whole wide world. Now I want to talk a little bit about how to get in touch with that power. If you're like, okay, I buy it, I buy those definitions, but how do I find it in me? Now I call this the code word exercise. And what you need to do for this is to think of some of your proudest moments in life. Something where you feel just filled with pride when you remember it, but it's also a time when you did something you didn't think you could. I'll give you a few seconds just to lock that in for yourself. Now, as you think about it, did this accomplishment involve comfort, ease, predictability? Did you know exactly what you were doing and how it would all unfold? I'm guessing not. And I see Suzanne shaking her head, so I guess she's on track with me. Do these moments represent your true spirit, your true self, the fully powerful you? I think they do. And I'll share you an example from my own life. One of these times occurred when my kids were little, when our parked and unoccupied minivan was the victim of a hit and run. I had been to a nighttime meeting in town and I drove home and didn't see the damage until I walked out of the car park and turned around and saw the whole back end was just smashed in. It was awful. But then my husband and I were looking at the car. We found a little scrap of paper under the windshield wiper that said, I saw who hit your car, and it had a phone number. So we called it, and it was a man who told us that the person who hit our car was a delivery driver for a local restaurant, and he was driving a black Jeep. He did not get the license plate. We called our insurance company. They said, we can't do anything without the plate. We called the restaurant, and they wouldn't give us any information, which really ticked me off. My husband said, well, you know, there's nothing we can do. We're just going to have to pay for this. And I was like, no, no, I was so mad. So the next night I did a stakeout. I went and parked across the street from the restaurant and I waited for the delivery driver to show up. It took several hours. And by the time he did, it was dark and I couldn't see the plate from where I was. I had to get out of my car, cross the street, walk through the parking lot of the restaurant while he was loading his deliveries into his car. I called my husband and said, be prepared to write this down. And as I went by, I read the plate number to my husband. Meanwhile, my husband was freaking out on the phone going, are you okay? Are you safe? Is he yelling at you? What's happening? And it's just like, write this down. And then I walked into the restaurant, asked for a takeout menu, turned around and went back to my car. We reported the plate to our insurance company. Our insurance company made him pay for all the damage and gave us a rental car while a car was being fixed. Okay, my time is just about up. I want to give you a homework assignment related to that. Your homework assignment, if you choose to accept it, is to think about these kinds of moments in your life when you did something that went against your conditioning and make a code word out of it. Mine is stakeout. I don't have to tell myself the whole story, but when I need to access my power, I say stake out, and I remember how I felt in that moment. That's it for me. I have a gift I'm going to put in the chat. I have 5 sessions, 5 people, if they want to book a free session with me to help you with your power, your visibility, anything. I'll put that in the chat. First come, first serve. Thanks, everyone.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. I can't wait to come up with my code word, stakeout. So good. Thank you. Handing over to the fabulous Linda. Take us away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Katz. I am a women's life coach, a Koya-inspired movement teacher, dream worker, podcast co-host with the delightful Laura Gates-Lupton that we just heard from, and author of the book Homecoming. I am privileged enough to accompany and guide women on the heroine's journey back home to themselves, shedding patriarchal conditioning so that we can become and embody more of the wise and wild self that we truly are. So part of the inner cage that I work with of patriarchal conditioning is something that I call the tyrant king, which is kind of a form of the patriarchal masculine. And one of the hallmarks of this energy is seeing the world as a binary, breaking things down into either or, black or white, good or bad, right or wrong. And what I have found is that visibility can kind of easily fall into this category as well, where we tend to see visibility as good and invisibility as bad. And I like to look to nature as a guide and a teacher. And when I do that, I see that there are gifts to both visibility and invisibility, depending on the circumstance in which they're used. Right? The chameleon can blend into its environment so that it doesn't have to become a tasty snack for whatever bird or predator might be in the area. The same way a leopard that is spotted can quietly kind of creep through, being completely concealed because of the dappled sunlight coming in through the trees. And on the other side, we have like the peacock with its full plumage out, like, look at me, I'm trying to attract attention. And so how that, I think, can apply to us as well is that we want to be able to consciously choose where, when, how, and why we are being visible. And in order to do that, we need to break down that binary, because the binary doesn't really give us a lot of choice. If one is good and the other is bad, then we're always going to kind of go towards the one that we see as being good. So to be able to choose means that we also have to embrace and accept, and maybe even invite in the seasons of invisibility just as much as we invite in seasons of visibility. And this is where the heroine's journey comes in. So when most women come to me in my practice, they have been in what I call a season of perpetual summer. Perpetual summer is one where we are out there all the time, right? It's a season of extreme busyness. It's one of a lot of extroversion. It is where we're doing a lot. There's endless productivity, but it has a tendency to come at the cost of our feelings, our well-being, and our overall sense of who we are and what is true for us. And I would say that perpetual visibility falls into this category as well, because we have this belief that it's always better to be visible, like more is always better. And we always have to be in full bloom, even if that may not be the truth of how we feel. I could feel like I'm withering on the vine inside, but for you, I have to perform that I am in full bloom. And there's a cost to that, right? And I know that this can be really difficult, especially for us as women in business, because visibility is tied to our livelihood in some way. But that doesn't make those costs any less real. Some of those costs include burnout, depletion, lack of motivation and desire, right? Kind of getting disconnected from why am I doing this thing in the first place, right? It can even come as body illness. I know that I've experienced that myself. On the tail end of burnout is like there's actual physical, right? It's a physical thing. But because this is what we're praised for, and because this is what we see, and this is what our culture normalizes, even though there are all these costs to it, it can still, when that call to winter comes, it's still terrifying. And so, what is the winter season? So the winter season is one of slowing down, doing less, feeling more, listening to our bodies, connecting to what is true for us. It is a season of introspection. And I love that word, especially in terms of visibility, right? Because introspection is about looking inward. And yes, in the winter season, we might become a little less visible to the people out there, but we become more visible to ourselves. And I think that's really important. And so this is also a season of rest and reflection, of finding our own sacred ground, pulling that energy that's been out so much down into our own soul roots. But what can happen is because we tend to live or see, this kind of binary way of looking at visibility, when this happens, right? Winter is like a very misunderstood season for us culturally. And when we might be feeling that call or hearing that call to winter for ourselves, or we end up there without even feeling the call, we're just, here we are, we think that something has gone wrong, right? It's like, I was posting on social media twice a day for the last 8 months, and now I can't open the app. I just can't bring myself to do it. Why do I not want to go do my intro workshop that I've been doing twice monthly for the last 4 months? I just can't do it anymore, right? What is wrong with me? Again, there's this theme of like, there's something has to have gone wrong. And so we meet ourselves in those moments with a lot of judgment. And when we do that, we aren't able to absorb the gifts and the nourishment that the winter season offers. Because we can't absorb the gifts and be beating ourselves up for it at the same time. So again, this time of invisibility is a time of rest and reflection. It's a time of getting to know ourselves and what really matters to us, reconnecting to our why. It's a time of beginning to regulate our nervous systems a little bit more, of resourcing ourselves. When if we've been in perpetual summer, we've probably been running past our own needs for as long as we could even know. And so the invitation here is to, in order to be able to consciously choose visibility, is to also embrace the seasons of invisibility in your life. Allow that to be a choice that you can consciously make. And there's one other piece that I want to bring in here. And this is, again, why the heroine's journey, why knowing ourselves is so vital. Because sometimes we can be in a season of blooming, but we try to prevent it from happening because it's really scary. Like we've been talking about, visibility is, even when we're blooming, it's a high sensation activity, right? As Larisa shared. And so there can be those parts where we actually want to step into greater visibility in our work, but at the same time, we hold ourselves back. So that's very real, right? And again, we want to be able to know ourselves so that we can choose what feels most true for us. So that when we come back around into those summer seasons, it becomes an expression of deep meaning and deep purpose for us. It becomes a decision rather than a compulsion. And we can be visible from a place of fullness, from a place of desire, and from a place of overflow. In terms of business, what might this look like? For me, this is something that I'm still exploring. I haven't nailed it on the head, but I would love to build in greater cyclicality and seasonality into my business so that I make space for the expansion and for the contraction without making either one wrong. This can also show up in smaller cycles, kind of like the cycles of the moon, right? So this is it's a high visibility event for me. That means that on the tail end of this, I'm going to go into my cave and you won't see me for the next 3 days so that I can come back to myself and to just normalize that and find our own sacred rhythms. Because when we begin to allow visibility and invisibility to be a conscious choice that doesn't have any pressure or judgment attached to it. We can become like that peacock when we want to be. We can be the stealthy leopard or the very quiet chameleon. And we can reclaim our own sacred rhythms. And we can step into the fullness of our expression with greater ease and vitality. So if this is something that you're interested in, thank you. My name is Linda Katz again, and I'm offering 3 free soul diving sessions, and I'll post that in the comments, but thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was fabulous. And now to bring us home, handing over to the amazing Karen, and then I'll quickly go and set a timer for you.
Hello, everyone. Before I introduce myself, while I'm doing that, please grab something that you can doodle on and doodle with. I promise the doodling will be easy and fun and perhaps a little illuminating. I want to give you a little experience with that. So I am Karen Light. I'm a professional artist illustrator with 2 businesses. At Studio Light Illustration, I work with self-publishing authors and illustrate mostly children's books. And at How Doodle, I'm a creative executive function coach, helping creatives and creative teams get their stuff together so they can create more. So this visibility thing is something I think about a lot as both a business owner and as a creative. And I want to talk to you today about showing up messy as a practice that can increase positive visibility. And I want to start with a story. So for many, many years, decades actually, I worked as a teaching artist and an art teacher in schools where there's a dress code, right? Well, I eventually learned to ignore those dress codes. At the beginning of my teaching career, I tried to follow them. I wanted to look professional, right? Didn't want to break the rules or draw any unwanted attention to myself. But it really wasn't very practical being an art teacher. And in fact, it would really piss me off when my clothes got ruined because I never wanted to buy them in the first place. I just bought them for the job, right? So it was money wasted on many fronts. And as a young artist and teacher, there wasn't a lot of money to waste. So just really, really started irking me. And bit by bit, I started giving up this exhausting game of being professional. Now, the fear voice was really loud when I started wearing clothes that had like paint on them. I wore some for you guys today. I don't know if you can see it in Zoom very easily. Or when I wore my colored jeans instead of professional pants, right? But I kept practicing showing up messy, and that voice would get quieter and quieter. Now, just as I feared, I did draw more attention to myself, but unlike what my fear told me, it wasn't negative attention. In fact, it was mostly positive. I became more visible in the way that I wanted to be seen. The way I wanted to be seen was a little messier, and so it felt more like me. I was less self-conscious. People were actually prompted by the paint to say, hey, what projects are you working on, right? And in fact, my supervisors didn't even care because I was just fully in with my students, and they loved what I was doing with them. I didn't have to worry about silly clothes. So that's who I am. I'm somebody who makes messes, right? In particular, I really like big, colorful messes. I'm not just a digital illustrator. I have mixed media work going on like crazy over here. And I really like inviting people into the messiness with me. So that's how I show up. If I'm being authentic, then it should reflect that, right? And that's what makes people want to work with me in that way for those reasons. If I were to show up in completely pristine clothes, really well put together, some people might be a little skeptical. Consciously or unconsciously, they're going to feel this dissonance between what I say and how I'm showing up, right? Because fundamentally, we're very sensitive creatures. We feel these disconnects, whether aware of it or not. We're rooting out inauthenticity, and we tend to walk away from situations where it just doesn't feel right, right? Where that's not lining up. We might have more surface excuses of like, I don't have time or energy for this. But in fact, maybe there's a bigger underlying reason, which could be that we're just not trusting the person to do what they say they're going to do because they didn't show up in a way that builds that trust. Now, why we hide this mess when it can be such a connective asset, is a longer conversation, another one. But for now, I want to give a few examples of what it might look like to hide the mess of a creative project, because sometimes it isn't even obvious that we're doing it. So here are a few ways that I've done it, that I notice some clients do it as well. Number one, not talking about our projects until we are sure they will work out. 2, trying to get all the answers as to how it's going to work out all the way through. And if we can't get it, we stop ourselves from starting. 3, we tell people things are going fabulously, when in fact you're a confused, frustrated mess who could use a little support and a listening ear. 4, getting creatively blocked in the middle of trying to achieve something because you're viewing the mess as a failure. 5, making sure our hair and our makeup and background are just perfect before we snap a photo or post a video, right? Okay, so those are ways that it shows up in my life. Maybe you have other ways too, but here's where the doodling comes in. I'm going to invite you to get a little messy and colorful with me in this moment, or use whatever you got. It doesn't matter. It could be on the back of a scrap piece of paper. I want you to spend the next 20 to 30 seconds doodling the most perfect star you have ever doodled. So 30 seconds starting now. Really try to get all the angles the same, measurement, however you measure it, degrees, that's the word I'm looking for. Try to get the same length on all the sides. Make it as perfect as you can. If you notice something that's not right, go ahead and fix it. Really look at it. Notice anything that's wrong and try to fix it now. All right, just a few more seconds. So curious in the chat, if you want to put a few, I give up. Jacqueline's already ahead of me. How are you feeling trying to do that? Put some feeling words into this. What's going on out there? I hate it. Yes. Mission impossible. Angry, frustrated, swanky. Yeah, tight. Oh, yes, tight. Exactly. It's not a whole lot of fun. Did not like it. I told you, like, I was going to have fun with you with the doodling, and I lied, right? It wasn't that much fun. So what I want you to do now is look at that star and pick one of the imperfections to focus on for a second. If you're like me, you have several, right? Nobody probably got this perfect, but pick one to focus on for a second. But I want you to bring a little curiosity into it now. I want you to take it one step further and doodle on that imperfection in such a way that you amplify it. Like, just let yourself go for the next 30 seconds. Have fun amplifying that imperfection. Blow it up. And while you're doing that, I'm going to give you a few questions to ponder. What if that imperfection says something uniquely interesting about you? How might that imperfection be something that attracts others to you instead of detracting them as your fear wants you to believe? How might that imperfection make that star a much more authentic representation of you than any perfect star could ever be? So this part of the process is usually a little bit more fun for folks, and I hope it was for you too. If you keep practicing, it can be downright freeing and fun, right? It's a relief to be just what we are, which is messy and in process. Then we can find the magic in the mess and give others permission to be their messy, magical selves too. I recently heard someone wisely say, your message is in the mess. And I loved it. Your message is in the mess. In other words, if we're in a service-based business, we tend to want to help people with things that we've struggled with. Doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out. It means you just have spent time there and you learn things that might help. But if you are walking that path and you speak to that struggle, you see them, and you're seeing them is what makes them see you. So to that, I'm going to give you 4 ways to build a messy practice that can help you show up messy and increasingly grander and meaningful ways so they can see you. Start with whatever feels good or use them as a jumping off point. 1, Notice a messy spot in your house. As long as it isn't attracting bugs or causing danger, right? See if you can just leave it for a while and notice your thoughts and feelings about it. If you're somebody who feels bad about that, see if you can just get to neutral. If you feel neutral, see if you can actually embrace it or even appreciate it. 2, find a fun way to make a mess, like actually on purpose. Start a food fight with your kids. Roll around in some mud, right? Find some house paint and splatter it on some paper in the garage. Like make a mess on purpose. Again, notice your thoughts and feelings. See if you can work to them to actually enjoy the process. Notice what comes up for you there. 3, post imperfectly on social media if you post. Don't worry too much about all this stuff. One of my most popular reels was me right after a workshop or a workout. Bad lighting, big fat period pimple right here on my face. Okay? People loved it. It was great. I was being real. 4, think of an aspect. Oh, that's my time. But think of an aspect in your business that you haven't figured out, but you learned something about it, right? So I help people complete creative projects, but I have a lot of unfinished stuff. What would it look like to talk about that with your clients? Or maybe even build a program or write a blog. So gradually, with practices like these, you can build a new relationship with the messy parts of yourself. And there's nothing more attractive than somebody who can show up and her whole self, messes and all. So you can get my free Awaken Guide. I'll put the stuff in the chat and the show notes to help you build a messy practice or any creative goal that you got. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. What a way to bring us home. Just quickly, before we hit stop and move into the bonus track, I'm going to ask again the questions we asked from the beginning just to see if there's been any shift. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all and 10 is I'd rather hide out and procrastinate all day long, after listening for these last 6 presentations, how do you feel about visibility? Like, has it shifted? And if it has, great. And if it hasn't, that's okay too. Sometimes when I do these 1 to 10 things, because I do this whenever I do anything, it's actually got worse because it's been stirred up and activated. So it's just like a little self-reflection thing. Oh, hang on a sec, Karen, just announcing your message came straight to me, love, for your bonus. So you might want to put that in the chat box. Was 10, but now it's 20. 5, other end of the scale, 3 instead of 7. 2 to 3, 1 to 3, 3. Yes. And whichever, once again, different underwear, different ways that we resonate with things. And just before we hit stop on the record and move into the Q&A, what's one word that describes how you feel right now at the end of this hour about being visible in your business? Inspired. Oh, inspired, hopeful, lighter, solidarity. Yes, I like that. Excited, curious, more accessible. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So whenever you're ready, Laura, to hit stop. Oh, there's more scared-sided. I like that word. Encouraged, more afraid because I have less excuses. Yeah, sit with that. That's such a great one. Wowed. Yes, love it. Keep them coming. And if Laura, you want to hit stop, if you